Good afternoon. We are continuing our discussion on Prison Slave as Hegemony, Silent Scandal by Frank Wilderson. Today, as usual, we recap the last class and we follow up with the last part of the text, Prison Slave. And of course, we finish with our usual discussion. Before starting, I would like to thank you again for our last discussion on mass incarceration and the parallel we can make with slavery and left and Black coalitions. Your participation was excellent and you gave great insights. I learned a lot, especially from students who talked about Foucault, and it was really helpful. Thank you for that. I would like to read this announcement, public service announcement. I don't know how to title this. Although this philosophy class encourages light-hearted discussion of topics related to the required readings, out of respect for me, a racialized Black instructor, and all Black American victims of police brutality, the class does not allow any discourse justifying police violence. If you feel that all Black people are criminals and therefore deserve what they got, you can keep your thoughts and data to yourself because it will never be on the table for discussion. I hope this won't block you, block the discussion. It's just a limit that I would like to provide because, of course, we are always off topic in the discussion. Some people talk about their dating life, talk about their cats, their kids, the price of houses, and it's really lighthearted. But when it comes to real suffering and real violence that some Black people suffered at the end of the police, I cannot allow myself to provide a platform for such discourse. It's not up to discussion, and I would like to thank people who try to answer that person, but it's really going nowhere. It's not up to the course is not a place where we talk about data and without interpretations. We are doing philosophy, and of course you can do whatever you want outside of the class, but I strongly suggest you to not waste your time, your precious time, to try to find data to counteract or to contradict the person who says that Black people deserve that kind of violence. My experience says that although it looks like a rational conversation, it is not, and you will see that you are wasting your time trying to be rational with this kind of argument. It's a frustrating experience, and your time is limited as a university student. Therefore, I strongly suggest that you just read Wilderson and you do your annotated bibliography. You try to write your assignment. And if you have the time, you can read also the additional readings because it can be helpful for your essay. Just few students last time did that, but every time they did that, it was very good for them, for their argument. Moving on, if there is no question about what I just said, we can move on to the regular program. We discussed last time this Wilderson main idea that Black subjects present a challenge to white subjects in the pursuit of coherence, because you have to see that the human brain is a machine that needs to be coherent. When a subject sees himself acting in a way that contradicts his values, he feels discomfort. He feels anxious. And Wilderson applies the same reasoning for political bodies. So we are talking about the collective consciousness of the white Americans. So how Wilderson defended his ideas in the first part of the text, he says that Gramsci's model of hegemony cannot explain the terror, despotism, and unwaged labor that characterize both slavery and today's USA carceral system. So Gramsci's is used both in the academic world and in the social movements world. That's why Wilderson talks about Gramsci. And the Black subject is absent from Marx and Gramsci's analysis of power, even though capitalism was built on his back. That makes Gramsci's and Marx analysis a little bit suspicious, according to Wilderson. Why the Black subject? Est-ce que tu peux mettre tes écouteurs, mon coach boy? Thank you. Une grande fille. And finally, what we discussed last time is that left social movements and Black social movements have different conceptions of freedom. Irreconcilable. I'm sorry, this is my daughter and she will put her on headphone. Est-ce que tu peux le brancher, s'il te plaît? Branche. Tu l'as bien branché? OK. Il discuss OK. Il discuss Fanon and the wretched of the earth on violence, Manichaean conception of the world. You have the settler zone and the colonized zone, and both worlds are irreconcilable. It's the same for white people and Black people in the USA, or left people and Black people in the USA, irreconcilable zones, according to Wilderson. So that's what we discussed last time. I'm going to move my arm so my voice is not as monotone. Okay, so if there are no questions, we can move on to the last part of the text. USA Black people make the USA white people feel anxious and uncomfortable, according to Wilderson. And to prove this idea, he used the theoretical perspective provided by Coetzee's historical axis and anthropological axis. from the book White Riding, published in 1988. And the method Wilderson used to prove his idea was to compare Black people to Native Americans and to Latinos. So sorry, this is Coates, a really famous author, award-winning author from South Africa, I think. And with this method, Wilderson concludes that the Native Americans are recognizable entities for white Americans because they provided the Constitution. US used Iroquois Constitution and provided this notion of rights and sovereignty that you can see in the treaties between the US and the Native Americans. All these notions can be put in the historical axis. Therefore, that makes the US an entity that looks rational and coherent. Same reasoning applies for the Latinos with this notion of immigration and this idea of willingness to arrive. Therefore, with this notion of immigration, US still looks rational and rational entity and a coherent entity because immigration is an acceptable category in the historical axis. But when you talk about Black people, they cannot be put in the historical axis because Black people presence in the USA is connected to their past as enslaved person. And slavery makes US look like an irrational, incoherent entity. That's why Black people's presence make white people uncomfortable, according to Wilderson. Now we are in the concluding remarks with other perspectives, this time from Frantz Fanon, Black Skin, White Mask, and presumably Jacques Lacan. I say presumably because Jacques Lacan's name is not mentioned in the text, but the notions, the imaginary, the symbolic, and the real are famously from Jacques Lacan. And Wilderson does not provide definition for these terms. Therefore, if you want to look up for these terms, it's up to you, but you don't need to study them and use them as technical concepts in your essay. Because it's not easy to look up for Lacan's terminology just in the dictionary. It's very complex. But still, we can look up the ideas. For example, for the imaginary, the Black person is a phobogenic object, which means object that causes fear or phobia, which is also what Fanon discussed in Black Skin, White Mask, if you remember. And because, of course, rape, prison, and AIDS are all concepts associated with Black people, or Black people are associated with this concept in the collective imaginary, collective unconscious of Americans in the USA. Another idea is that Blackness in the USA cannot be inserted into historical categories, as it was demonstrated previously with this comparison between Black people, Native Americans, and Latinos. Finally, civil society is possible because Black bodies magnetize bullets, which is how Wilderson expresses himself. And civil society is Gramsci's concept that is not defined in the text. Therefore, I do not ask you to use this concept as a technical term in your essay. If you want to look up, it's really up to you. But you just have to remember that for Wilderson, Black people are subjected to gratuitous violence. Concluding remarks there, Wilderson agrees with Fanon that Blackness is the site of dereliction. And to recapitulate all his texts, he says, a Black person in the USA is a phobogenic object, a past without heritage, the map of gratuitous violence, and a program of complete disorder. I think this sentence recapitulates all the essay. So the implications of this conclusion is that for Wilderson, a Black person in the USA is either a prison slave or a prison slave in waiting, which is similar, if you remember, to Dred Scott. Oh, Dred Scott was a freed slave, but the court was able to put him back to slavery. And that's how all Black people live today. You never know when they will take you back to prison, because incarcerating or being violent to Black people is not contingent to a certain kind of transgression. Not necessarily, according to Wilderson. Of course, you are allowed to disagree with that. It's just that you are not allowed to say, in my course, that you think it's justified to brutalize Black people. Okay, Black rage does not need to be coherent to be recognized as valid. So as you see, coherent is really a key word in this text. And all Wilderson is trying to say is that Black rage does not need to be enclosed in this coherent politics that is the workers' politics, in which all they ask is reforms, and white woman politics, reforms too. It can stay. All you have to do is embrace the disorder and incoherence. Next week, we will discuss the vengeance of vertigo. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Emma a fini dans sa couverture. J'arrive pas à terminer. Have a nice day.